Welcome to DMM Downloads. We are podcasting another conversation about DMM between Jeff Crabtree and me, Rudy Rivera. Jeff and I are teamed together in Northern Colorado in a ministry we call DMM NOCO. DMM NOCO is unleashing disciple-making movements in Northern Colorado, and we thought it a good idea to start a podcast as a way to bring awareness and resourcing to ordinary people who are passionate about making multiplying disciple makers in our natural networks. Thanks for joining us in this journey. We hope you get a DMM download from this conversation. Hey, Jeff, we're back on a Tuesday afternoon. No, morning. Morning here. Gosh, late morning. We've already had coffee. You would think I would know it's morning and not.
Well, Rudy, we're still trying to help you figure between morning and afternoon.
Yeah, it's a windy, blue-skied, sunny day in Northern Colorado, and we're back to talk about DMM downloads.
That's exactly right, Rudy.
Great. And today's topic, because we're going to have a download each time we get together to talk, today's topic is why are you convinced, Jeff, about DMM? Why are we convinced about DMM? And so, yeah, take it away, Jeff. What do you think?
Great question. Maybe before I answer in specific, I've been in the movement world or disciple-making movement world for, I think, about 7.5 years. So obviously progression, learn, grow, go forward, step back, pause, all those different things in God shaping my heart and my mind towards movement. So obviously, this whole idea of why am I convinced has been a build-up. It's a step-by-step. It's taken time. But I think as I process that, Rudy, there's a variety of things that come to my mind in which has convinced me that this pathway, this model, this mindset of disciple-making movements is so valid. First and foremost, because I think it aligns with the life and lifestyle of Jesus. It seems like we can get into models and principles and thoughts and mindsets, but do they always trace back to Jesus? And so I really, when I look at the life of Jesus, what he did, what he prioritized, what he modeled, it seems that it was about making disciples and making disciples who would then make other disciples. So I think I'm convinced because it just looks so much like the life and the lifestyle of Jesus. I think another one, Rudy, that would capture me is we all know about the Great Commission that Jesus gave us. And it says what? Go, or as you're going, as you live your life. As we know that in the Greek, the command is not to go, but to make disciples. And so as we're living our life, make disciples. And so it seems to me that I'm convinced because not only did Jesus model it, but Jesus gave us the Great Commission. And so it seems to me that DMM kind of throws a lot of the other good things to the sideline and prioritizes the Great Commission. And I think that is the heart of God, is as we're living our life, being lights in the midst of a darkened world, that we're stepping into the Great Commission. I think another one, and I got a whole list, Rudy, you know when you ask me a question, I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, it's good.
It seems to me as I peek into the early church, we look at the book of Acts, we see how the early church got started and ignited and how it expanded and it spread. It's very disciple-making oriented, movement-oriented.
Yeah, for sure.
So not only is it Jesus' model, it aligns with the Great Commission, it aligns with what I see biblically of the early church. So I just leave it there. I think the other thing it does for me is I never really thought, Rudy, in the 40 years I was in traditional ministry, church as we know it, legacy model, whatever adjective we use, I'm not sure I ever really prioritized or looked at or thought a lot about the Great Commission. And it seems to me that it's the model, it's the pathway to help us fulfill the Great Commission. I think I just thought a little bit shorter. And again, I was trained on how to start churches, lead churches, grow churches, maintain churches. And so is all of that really focused towards the Great Commission? I guess maybe in some way, in some loose way, I thought it was, but I'm not so sure that it was. So I'm convinced of disciple-making movements because it has the Great Commission in mind as the finish line, as the goalpost, and I see it can happen that way. I'm not sure I can see it as well the other way. And one more that comes to my mind, and again, thanks for letting me download, would be it empowers me, disciple-making movements empower me to be an effective disciple maker. I'm not sure the model in which I learned or grew up or cultivated was so specific in helping me or empowering me to be a disciple maker. And I guess I'll just put the icing on the cake there, Rudy, is not to throw myself under the bus or my past under the bus or legacy churches or traditional churches under the bus. I'm just not so sure that model was the model that Jesus presented. I'm not sure it really is as Great Commission oriented as I thought. It's not so much what I see in the New Testament. It's not so much empowers the person to be a disciple maker. Now that's a lot of download for one little question, but I have been enthusiastically sold on. I think disciple making movements have convinced me that this is the way to go.
So can you say more maybe to the specifics of what your past in terms of training or methodology or, I'm trying to find the word to describe it just a minute ago, kind of your next to last point of why you feel like you're convinced is you had some thoughts. Well, your training, your past was this X over here, but you're looking at disciple making movements as kind of a Y or a different model. Is that the right word? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So can you be a little more specific about what your training was that you would say, gosh, I was in this world all these years and I was there and I was doing it. But now that I'm looking back, I think, boy, I found something else that speaks to what wasn't effective or in your life just wasn't as biblical maybe or as modeled after Jesus's model. So I don't know if that makes sense. Can you try to make sense of that?
I'm an older guy, Rudy, so the Bible says to respect your elders. So, I got saved in the late 70s, in 1978. And so obviously whatever was contemporary there or custom or the track, I went on to Bible college. So again, a lot of that was hermeneutics and homiletics, interpreting the scriptures well and then learning how to preach them well. And so there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's good, and I'm grateful I had that opportunity. But then where did you go from there is that you were to either plant churches or to take over existing churches and to see them grow. The late 70s, early 80s, I think we had the great church growth model, how to build larger churches. And so I was obviously swept up into that, and that was kind of my goal was to take all my training in Bible college and all my learning to build a larger, growing church. Now, is there anything wrong with that? Probably not, but I'm not sure that it equals fulfilling the Great Commission or advancing the Great Commission. I think in some way we'd like it to believe it was that, but I'm not sure it was. So I don't know
why are you not sure it was? Looking back,
because I'm not sure I leaned into making disciples who then made other disciples who made other disciples who launch churches that launch churches that launch churches. And that's the pathway or the foundation or the model in disciple-making movements. And even though I think I wanted them to be the same thing, I'm not sure that they are or they were. And so, I've kind of said I'm going to die on the hill of the Great Commission, disciple-making movements, but I'm not the other. It wasn't insincere, but I'm not sure I saw life transformation in disciples making disciples who made disciples.
So would you say it has more? I'm just wanting to unpack it for everybody listening and for me, but I'm convinced, but I'm curious as we try to help other people kind of gain perspective of DMM. What would you say it was the multiplication, transfer, replication, generational transformation you're talking about? Like the gospel going from generation to generation to generation, that was missing from your past to a degree, and thus there's no way the Great Commission could be fulfilled because there was no passing it along to other faithful men and women who could then pass it along to others. Is that part of it, or did you say it was something else? It was really about, that's a component, but there are other components that you might want to highlight here in the next couple of minutes before we're done.
Yeah, Rudy, I think my training, my focus was how to build a larger, growing local church. And I think that there was some hope that would then spill off into fulfilling the Great Commission, but I don't think it did. I think I spent so much time focusing on how to build the machinery, the system, the organization of local church that I think I lost, or maybe never had, I don't know, the goal of fulfilling the Great Commission. And I think just building a growing local church doesn't always equate with fulfilling the Great Commission. Do you see the difference there that I think I got caught up in?
Yeah.
And I'm not against local church, that, but I think we do need to ask and answer some harder questions. Is building a thriving, growing, larger mega church and all that system, does it really then fulfill the Great Commission? And I've got some questions whether that it actually does.
Yeah, so I've heard missiologists talking about the work of the Great Commission or missions, specifically maybe North American context, but them saying, you make disciples and churches will gather, will happen. But if you start with making a church, you may not make disciples. Is that kind of a simpler way of saying it?
That's kind of a clever way to describe it, but I think it's true. I think, again, we just get caught up in that the focus is planting churches or expanding churches or growing larger churches when I'm not sure that's what Jesus said. Again, now with new eyes and a new heart on the Great Commission, Jesus said, go make disciples.
Right.
And so, yes, we believe that if we're really making disciples, there will be ecclesia, there will be the gathering of church, but is church planting always, or growing a large church, does it always equate to making disciples who make other disciples? I would probably question that.
Yeah, and it seems like you're not alone in questioning that. Like, I think a lot of the research that seems to be coming out through Barna and Pew and others is maybe in North America at least, our primary audience here, Northern Colorado even, how are we doing? We're just asking that question, how has this been going for the church? And it does seem like we're maybe moving in that wrong direction, if you will. And maybe because we're focused on let's build churches and kind of losing that side of what Jesus said to make disciples. Maybe final thought. Any final thoughts? We're getting close to this episode being done, but clearly it's a download. We can keep talking about these things more and more. But as we kind of close up and wrap up this one, talking about why we're convinced anything else you might want to say?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that question, why am I convinced? And I know it sounds maybe a little subjective, even though I shared early points that were more objective, I think. The subjective part is, I think the Lord himself has captured my life and my heart and my perspective. And I guess maybe as I'm getting older, I have to think a little bit more my last chapter of ministry and what's going to cause me to climb the last mountain or sprint to the goal line or sprint to the finish line. I want to make sure it's what honors the Lord and pleases the Lord. And I think, again, fulfilling his great commission for me is the hill I'm going to die on, is the goal line that I'm going to sprint to, is trying to make multiplying disciples that make other multiplying disciples so the Great Commission can be fulfilled.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. As you know, we talk regularly, but for me, it's helpful to hear you and others share, what is this thing, DMM, and why are we convinced? So we'll end it there for this week. We'll catch up next week again with another download, but thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff, for that engaging download. In DMM, we like to say that disciples are learners. I know I'm learning a lot from my conversations with you, Jeff. From all of us in DMM NOCO, we hope you got a DMM download from the conversation today. Don't forget to leave this podcast a review wherever you are listening online. If you found this conversation helpful, please head over to our site, dmmnoco.com, where you can find more content for your DMM journey, including a Self-Paced Habits of a Multiplying Disciple course. The course is designed to give you practical next steps to becoming a DMM practitioner and multiplying disciple maker. You can take that course for free at dmmnoco.com. We will be back next week with another engaging DMM download episode. Until then, may you hear from God through his Spirit and take simple steps of obedience in what you hear.